In this video, we're going to show you how to install the rear lower rearward control arm on your Dodge Charger located behind your rear wheels. Using a 22mm socket, loosen and remove the lug nuts. Grab the wheel and remove it, set it aside. On the driver's side bottom portion of the car, you're going to find this large plastic skid plate. And if you come up to the front, there's going to be a series of 10mm nuts. We want to go ahead, loosen and remove these. I'm just using a deep 10mm socket. And on the back section here, there's going to be 3 push pins. Use your trim tool. There's 2 right here in the wheel well area. We're now going to go ahead and pull down on our shield. On our control in here, we have an 18mm bolt head, and on the other side is an 18mm nut. So I'm going to put the wrench on the inside, run my impact on the outside. You can see as that sprung up that this is torqued to its preload or compressed position here. And we're going to cover that when we install the new component. Now let's remove the plastic retainer here for our ABS. Use a small pocket screwdriver, and then right around the back side there's just a little retainer clip. You're gonna open that up, and it splits open like that. Slide that off. If you move further back, it's just a little C-clip. Now our ABS wire is free. Just tuck that off to the side. Now our inboard bolt comes through the cradle right here, and we have the nut. Now these are adjustable for camber, and these have a cam on the bolt itself. So what we want to do is we're going to clean, and you want to have either a sharp crayon or a marker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of mark this. I'm going to use a Sharpie, and I'm just going to mark up here where the cam is protruding up. Now, if it was down on the bottom, you would mark that there. But this is going to help me when I reinstall the bolt in the cam, that it's going to give me a preliminary alignment spec. This will give me a general idea. Now, you're still going to have an alignment done after this control arm is installed, but that'll put us in a base setting per se. Now, we're going to use our short extension here with an 18mm swivel socket on our impact on the nut side. We have a wrench on the other side just to hold that bolt in place. Now the other side also has a cam, but once we set this one here, or we have this marked, you don't have to mark the other side. Good, remove that nut. You can see the cam is a washer. But the cam is also keyed, so it has a flat spot on it that matches the bolt itself. So you can't really screw that up. It's going to go on one way, and then you position it where you had the marker or the crayon mark. Now at this point here, this is where it gets a little bit more challenging. However, it can still be done. Is watch when I push that bolt out, it hits the spare tire area. So this tells us that we now have to drop the rear cradle. We're going to tilt down the driver's side so that we can get this bolt down between the spare tire well and the exhaust. So let's go ahead and tackle that next. Now I'm going to take our jack and I'm going to put it underneath the rear differential. The rear differential itself is not only bolted to the chassis itself, but it's also bolted to the rear of the cradle itself. So what we're going to do is Make sure we support this evenly. And we're just going to put a little bit of pressure on it. We're not lifting the vehicle or the differential. It is literally there to support it. So that's where you're going to place your jack. Now on the back of the vehicle, right behind the coil spring, you're going to notice the rear bolt here. It is just in front of the exhaust. I'm going to go ahead and use our 18 millimeter socket. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to remove that completely. I'm going to thread that in just a little bit. You see we have some play here. Let's go ahead and move forward and loosen that front bolt. Now the other bolt is just beside the lower forward control arm and our fender liner. That bolt's not anchoring at this point. That tells me that the cradle is lowering down a little bit. Now at this point here, our forward bolt came out. We're going to loosen and remove that rearward bolt completely now. Let's go ahead and lower our pole jack slowly. And we have our bolt here. So what we can do is trying to work that cam bolt out. We need just enough room to clear this. So continue to lower that jack. And there we have it. Good, work your arm out. Insert the new arm and go ahead and get your cam bolt in. Push that through. With the inner bolt installed, I'm going to go ahead and throw in this bolt here, and I'm just going to get the nut started on there. Thread that on. Now let's go ahead and get the nut and the cam bolt installed on the inward bolt. Now you can normally tell by what side the nut was on by the clean spot. This side here was facing inward where it's all clean, and then this here matches up to the nut. So I want to make sure we install it the same way. Line up the cam end. Go ahead and get that nut started. With both of these bolts started, I'm now going to go ahead and raise up on our jack, and then we'll reinstall the bolts for the cradle. All right, we have our rearward bolt started. Let's install the forward bolt. All right, we have both of those started. Let's go ahead and tighten those down. Now that we tightened down the rear one, we're going to go back to the front one and just double check the tension on that one. You want to make sure that these are just good and tight. With the rear subframe anchored, we can now remove our pole jack. Now at this point, you want to put your jack on the outer portion of our lower control arm and raise the vehicle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compress this into what we call a neutral ride height. And what that means is if we had the tires on this here and the car was on the ground and the suspension is compressed, that is our neutral ride height. So that's why when we undid this bolt and it popped up, that's because this was torqued in its neutral ride height. You can see how much of a drop that had. So let's go ahead and raise your suspension just to the point where it starts to come off of your jack stands. Okay. We're now at that point, it just started to shift on our rack. So now let's go ahead and tighten down and torque our outward bolt. I'm going to torque this to 74 foot-pounds. So we're going to put our box wrench on the inboard bolt. Want to make sure that the cam here is in between the two tabs. Now on the other side, make sure that when you tighten this down, that the cam is in the same position as you had marked with your marker. Now we just gently snugged it. We can go ahead and move if it's not all the way tight, we should be able to move it like this with our wrench on the outside. You see if I move that wrench back and forth, it's going to move that cam. And we now need to position that. There it is, so the cam is almost at the top on the back there. Now we just need to hold a wrench and torque this to 66 foot-pounds. Now remember, this is just a preliminary alignment setting. This does set the toe. Anytime you play with a link control arm or anything like that, you need to have an alignment performed after the job is done. Go ahead and remove your jack. Reinstall your ABS, plastic clip, square retainer, just snip that on. Install the lower splash shield. I'm going to go ahead and get some of the nuts started here first. All right, we're going to go ahead and snug these down. We'll start from the front. Install your plastic push pins. Go ahead and grab your wheel. Set that into place. I'm going to go ahead and install all of our lug nuts. Thread them all, and then we'll go ahead and snug them down. Torque down your lug nuts to 130 foot-pounds. We're going to do this in a crisscross pattern. Now you want to go ahead and bring the vehicle down and get your alignment performed.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.